This isn't how this year was supposed to go. There wasn't a solid pattern to look at and see things playing out the way it did this year. And yet here we are. Yes, Bitcoin is up from its lows of 14,000, but no meaningful altcoin run yet. Now, so many people have taken this to believe, as Raoul Pal puts it, we can't have nice things. Now, they have capitulated and decide crypto isn't for them. But if we step back and distance ourselves from the emotion, we see that this is mostly a function of M2 money supply growth not having really run yet, which, looking back, is the environment every altcoin run has happened in. And this coming year, with the Federal Reserve going to quantitative easing and interest rates coming down, 2026 is highly likely to see some massive M2 money supply growth. Now, will that impact crypto for real? Today is a good day to talk about it, as this is our last buy, wait, or sell show of 2025. Welcome to the Crypto Rain channel and our family. Now, have you ever worried about money? What if you learned to use some of your money to work for you in just the right way so you never had to worry about money again? I grew up poor in life, secondhand clothes, bologna sandwiches every day for lunch, and it isn't bad to grow up that way. But I realized the true value of money is that it allows us options in life, and it can decrease that gnawing worry we carry of how do we meet all those financial obligations and perhaps afford the nicer things we want and the travel we want. Well, after a few months of being in crypto, when I started 8 years ago, I recognized that crypto investment done right had the most amazing, massive potential to allow us to get to a place where we don't have to worry about money again, at least not in the same ways. After 8 years of being in crypto, I know that crypto can and will change your finances and your life, but there is a huge catch. It only works if you do it right. While being in crypto, I learned something very scary. You see, I know people that have been here longer than I have, but aren't even rich yet. They're still stuck where they were when they started. I learned that 95% of people don't make meaningful money or flat out lose money, and only 5% crypto investors make the life-changing gains that take them into the lifestyle that we all have dreamed about. So haven't we learned in life that if you do the wrong things, you get the wrong results? But if you find what successful people are doing and you copy exactly how they do things, you start having results. So I took that to account and focused 100% of everything I had on figuring out what those 5% did and copied the heck out of it and put it into practice myself. And by 2021, using those principles, I was able to fire my day job, move to the city I wanted, and put myself in position to never have to work again if I didn't want to. Here is where I share what I learned. I share my research on companies I like and why I like them. And today is our price analysis day. This is where we combine what I've learned with our special guest, Paul, joining us from DEVVE. And Paul has 30 years price analysis experience analyzing charts, and is a fun time to look at the price movements of what is happening to see what might be cheap, what might be really cheap, and what might be expensive, and what might be about to explode. Note, if you're looking to be part of that 5% that makes life-changing gains, join our Patreon in the link below. That will give you access to our Rainmaker private Discord. Because surrounding yourself with people who have learned and are learning to do things the right way is exactly how you get good at this. Do note, I'm not a financial advisor. Neither is Paul, who is joining us from DEVVE. You're still going to make your own decisions and be responsible for those results. So make it rain on that like button, strap in for the show, and help me welcome Paul to the channel. Paul, it's good to have you.
Yeah, it's great to be here, and it's close to our Christmas time, so I think people are starting to unwind positions, and things are going to start to get a bit quieter as we move into the new year. But yeah, it's always great to be here, and it's markets looking interesting as always, and looking forward to getting into it.
Yes. So we are live and we got some questions coming in already. Overall, we're at the end of 2025 and no meaningful run has happened in the crypto markets. Now, even myself expected the likelihood was highly probable that the run would happen. If not first quarter this year, it would follow up and be probably Q4 this year. And that has not happened. What with 30 years in price analysis, what happens? What do you usually do when you realize your thesis isn't playing out the way you wanted to?
Well, what you do is whenever you're looking at the markets, you always assume that you're going to be wrong. And that's kind of how I approach it. So, what I expect to happen, if it doesn't happen, then I call it having a parachute or a stop loss, or any position always has an exit point. And that's my way of protecting myself against being wrong. And in a similar way that you've described, when you look at a lot of markets, you could get 8 wrong out of 10, but those 2 can be the ones that make a lot of money. And so that's how I approach the markets generally. The way I would look at the situation as to what I've got wrong is to analyze what exactly has gone wrong in my view and why. And so that could be, has it was I expecting a run that hasn't happened, or was I expecting something to be higher that hasn't? I mean, you have to remember that if we take a step back and look at the big picture, we were talking about Bitcoin going up at $15,000 and it hit $120,000. And now it's had a big correction. So people who come in late will say, well, yeah, you were bullish and you got it wrong. But then you say, well, hang on a minute, from where? Where things haven't played out, definitely, has been altcoins. The altcoin run has not happened. And that's really surprising because everything was kind of set up for that. And that's kind of unusual. So what I would be looking at is, why is it that altcoins aren't running? Is it because that's telling us that we're reaching maturity and there will no longer be a bull market and things are turning over? So is it the weakest area that's telling us that there's stress in the system and this is time to be ultra cautious for an even bigger correction? Or is this just one of those fake outs that we've seen along the way that leads us to another very strong market that nobody's involved with because everyone's thrown in the towel? And usually at the end of this type of move, you would have a lot of sentiment that's extremely bullish, and we don't really have that. You still got, I mean, like, for example, let's look at something that's outside of the markets that you guys are looking at. Looking at gold and silver, people still aren't talking about gold and silver. And silver's now, from when I started talking about it down here, is gone up. We're talking 50%. And gold is, look, this is about to break out again, and this is probably going to head much higher. Now, this is with platinum and palladium. Palladium, remember platinum, those metals that nobody was interested in. Now, I'm showing you those because nobody's talking about them. And it's a similar thing to altcoins. It doesn't seem like many people are really talking about them. And it's unusual that you'd see a top or a bear market when sentiment is so relatively negative. So sentiment can be negative if the market is going down. But usually, if that's a bear market, sentiment will be positive as the market's going down. And, people are bullish rather than bearish. And it feels like everyone's really bearish on crypto right now. Certainly, if we look at coin market cap and fear and greed, it's still trading around 22. Now, that doesn't guarantee that the market's going to go up. It's just, it would be very unusual for altcoins to, or crypto in general, to go down a long way with that fear in the market, and without the normal introduction of a lot of late players. The people who see the headlines or hear that people have made money and want to jump in and make quick bucks, and they usually do make quick bucks, but they don't usually keep it. So sentiment wise, something feels off. But like anything, the longer you're in the market, the more you realize that anybody can be wrong, and you do have to hold that out. I mean, you meet any trader, any analyst, and it's usually the arrogant ones that get kind of, kicked out, or they won't be trading the book because they won't be able to manage it because they're not willing to admit they're wrong. And that's kind of rule number one of trading and investing. And the reason why it's so hard is it's actually, what you're asking is a very complex question in many ways, because sometimes how do you define what wrong is? Is wrong in the short term? Is it wrong in the long term? I mean, when Bitcoin was at 1,000 and it went down to $400, was that wrong to bought it there? And where is wrong in the system, and where's wrong for you? So that's whenever I'm looking at the markets, I'm always saying this is from my point of view what I think, but you also have to remember that there's lots of different people who are trading and investing. They've got different timescales, they've got different risk profiles, and all of that is not going to necessarily align with what I think, and it really shouldn't. It should always be their own view. Sometimes you find people who agree with you, and sometimes you find people who disagree with you, but it should always be your decision to do something. One of the very first things I ever learned when I started working for a bank was that when I first met economists and I heard their views, I thought, well, these are the smartest people and they should know where the markets are going. And I think, well, I think this is going to happen, but they think something else is going to happen. Well, maybe I'm wrong and maybe they're right. But I learned that they don't have the monopoly on being right. In other words, or wrong, I would say. My view was right, even though I was far more inexperienced than them. And I've got things wrong along the way. So what I'm trying to say here is that you'll only learn if you start applying your own view to the market and then learning when you're right and when you're wrong. And you should only look at other people to see whether they agree or disagree with your view. And actually, people who disagree with your view in some ways are more valuable because they can give you an idea of something that you haven't thought of. So most people like to hear views that agree with them, and that makes you feel good. But that's not actually what the markets are about. The markets are about, as you say, looking for when you're wrong. And somebody who's got the opposite view is always someone I want to listen to. I would find that was one of the key characteristics that differentiated me, traders, with the economists, because the economists never wanted to admit that they were wrong, and they never wanted to admit that your view was right, and they would always post hoc rationalize what's happened next or why they got it wrong. But they wouldn't want to hear the other side of the argument, whereas you can't afford to do that as an investor, as a trader. So keeping your mind open is always the way forward. So we will see how the markets are like this game that's inherently fascinating. It's kind of unfolding in front of us, minute by minute, and everyone's trying to work out who's right and who's wrong. And one of the most important things to remember is that it is hard. It's not an easy game to play, because if it was, everyone would be doing it, and not everyone can be successful. So that's all I would say at the moment. And I just keep looking at what markets are telling me, whether we're in a risk on or a risk off phase. And at the moment, it's still saying we're on a risk on phase. So we'll have to see if the crypto community comes back into the market, and we'll see where it goes. But just one final point, we are seeing a lot of signs that inflation is coming in. And I'm wondering whether that will be something that will ultimately boost the major coins as opposed to perhaps the altcoins. Altcoins might not be as susceptible to inflation, but they can be. I mean, we'll see. But Bitcoin and ETH and some of the top names, I think, will be susceptible to inflation. And it's pretty clear that that's what's coming. And by the acceleration in the gold and the silver markets and the base metal market. So I'd be getting ready for some kind of move from an inflationary point of view into next year. But again, we got to wait and see. Let the market tell us.
Yeah, what's interesting is I thought that it would come together, that a lot of the run would happen this year. But when I do investing in crypto, I set things up in a way that even when I'm wrong on timeline, because it is really hard to get timeline right in crypto, that it doesn't mess me all up. So I'll have my view of when it is, but some of the key principles are, number one, I don't invest using leverage, so that I can have the patience to play it out if it takes longer than I want it to. Secondly, I try to make smart positions in companies I think have strong fundamental idea. And I especially try to find ones that might have the runway that they can last longer if things are going to take longer. And you have seen some fall along the way. Some companies I think had very good ideas, and it just didn't, because the market took so long to happen. They just ran out of cash along the way, and they ran out of runway, like an airplane that runs out of runway before it hits the jungle, and they crash and burn. But we've seen some of those along the way, and people are like, oh my gosh, that company failed. Or sometimes they say it rug pulled. And it's like, that's not what a rug pull is. That's just a business failure. And that happens too. But like you talked about, if you do diversify, like what I figured out the 5% in crypto do that make crazy good gains is they don't buy on leverage, because in the crypto market, it takes longer to play out. They buy generally during the bear market, looking for projects that are really have good potential, that are what they feel good bets. And then they just wait till it plays out during the bull run. And whenever that happens, now, historically, it had been about every 4 years. And this time it didn't happen in the 4th year. Here we are going into the 5th year. So is it going to happen now? Yes, I strongly think it will. And like you said, it's washed a lot of people out, and the sentiment is so negative. And that's often the environment when things really are ready to run. Some of the questions coming in, I want to make sure you got this question early on from Fowler. Do you think the Japanese rate cut is already priced in, or can we have more blood in the streets tomorrow?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I don't follow Japan that closely. I'm not looking at what the BOJ is doing day to day, because I just know that they're trying to instill inflation in the system, which they're doing. And here in the UK, we've just had a rate cut. So it just goes to show central banks all seem to talk to each other and seem to do the same thing, isn't it? So they're all on a cutting cycle. Now, when you say blood on the streets, I'm not really sure what you're referring to. You're referring to their stock market, the Dow Jones, or the bond market, or the Japanese bond market? Because as far as the Nikkei goes, there is no blood on the streets at all. The Nikkei's been in a range, and this pattern here is potentially a top, but it's only a top if we break below the 48,200. This line here, 1, 2. Where it is now, it's more likely to be a consolidation that will move into an upward trend, or at least it's equivocal. So we'll wait and see. But that's not this type of collapse or this type of collapse. This is just a sideways market. Now, the Dow Jones was down 1%, and I don't know, I can't see any blood there. So maybe you're meaning crypto, but perhaps you could just put it in your comments as to what you're referring to in terms of blood. As far as the Japanese yen, the Japanese yield, let's have a look. 10-year yields. I think we looked at this on the show before, and bonds are definitely on the way down, which is the opposite inverse to what we're seeing here. Yields are going up and will go up further. 2% is a massive, massive resistance point, which is why it's stopped here. But I've been calling this higher because that's the trend. So there's definitely blood on the bond market streets, which is bad for the Japanese yen. But what's really interesting about the yen is that the yen is what's known as a funding currency. So what you'd normally do is buy a currency that pays a higher yield, like the Australian dollar, and you'd sell a currency that has a lower yield or low interest rates, and that would be something like the Japanese yen. So when the commodity stroke yen crosses move higher, that's normally positive for the market. So the dollar yen, both the dollar and the yen are going down. So it's kind of pick the market that you think is going to be weaker. Now, as you know, I think the dollar is going to keep going down, but the yen certainly is weakening, and that's something that the Japanese, I guess, want. That will help the stock market because it will help their exports, as long as it doesn't get out of control. And that final, as long as it doesn't get out of control, is quite important because you can rattle the markets, which I think is a similar conversation that we had about the Japanese market last time. So, and that's a conversation we'd have about the US market at the right time, but we're not quite there yet. So for the moment, I think I don't see any stress or any unnecessary stress other than the bond market, which I think they're kind of engineering to go down anyway because they want to instill inflation. But this is a dangerous thing that they're playing with because you can start inflation and then not be able to stop it. And yeah, that's the problem with what's called non-linear systems. You can make changes and nothing happens, and then a small change can suddenly cause a big reaction. And unfortunately, the economists who make these decisions don't really understand how markets work.
Right. That's so true. Chris says, good morning, Rainmakers. Happy Thursday. Howdy,
Hey, Chris.
Paul and Jay. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for coming on. Justin says, morning, you all. Thoughts on DEVVE? We will add that to the queue to look at. And I wanted to get this question. CPI came in cooler than expected. That opens the door to more Fed rate cuts. What do you think?
Exactly as the playbook. Exactly what we were saying. This was our call that we'd see a rate cut. You know, the rate cut that we just saw in the US was not generally expected a while back. There's this whole kind of pattern of rate cuts as inflation starts to take off is exactly what we discussed. And yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if there's another rate cut. That's why commodity markets are really bubbling up. And that's why I'm kind of surprised, and goes back to the question that started at the beginning of why hasn't, well, Bitcoin's obviously gone a long way, but why hasn't the altcoins, why haven't they moved as well? And they'd normally move in a very speculative environment. And this is Trump, or this is whatever you want to call it. This is the market being kind of pump primed by a lower dollar, lower oil, lower interest rates, higher stock market, lots of money swirling around. Why doesn't it flow into altcoins? I'm not sure, but it certainly helps that there's going to be more money around. Perhaps the market's just focused on other things. I'm not really sure, but one thing's for certain, yeah, another rate cut. And by the time they start thinking about raising rates, I think the inflation genie is going to be out of control. So we are at the cusp of this acceleration, I think, in inflation, because the numbers are going to take probably 3 to 6 months to start looking like they should be tightening. And by then, the forward-looking markets would have already started to offload their positions. But again, we'll talk about that as we go along. For the moment, things seem to be relatively well behaved. I think the biggest issue to look at would be the US 10-year, and that is relatively well behaved here. It's just trading around 4.1%. The 2-year, I mean, goodness, that looks like it's going to go even lower. And the 6-month and the 3-month, they've all been in downward trends. So it looks like more easy money's coming. So that's got to be a good look. I'll say it's a good sign. It is a good sign in one way, but it's also a bad sign in other ways that this is possibly not the right policy decision to be making at this point. So, you know, the speculative markets could be getting into dangerous territory in very short order. But for the moment, it's going to help the party going.
So it seems like precious metals have really been running away. And you said steel, most people aren't talking about it. Have other metals like copper and like some of the industrial metals been running up too?
Yeah, they have. I mean, we do kind of look at them. You know, this was the tariff correction in copper, but we looked at it a couple of times about how quickly it got. Down here, first of all, I thought we'd see another move down and then up, but it went straight up. But as it started to go up, it, you know, I was alerted to the fact that this is recovering well and should go much higher. And a long time ago, I predicted this sort of 6 level, and it's coming back towards that. Usually, from a technical point of view, when it breaks that, it runs into new highs, especially when everything else is moving. So you've got aluminium, or aluminum if you're in America. That's moving higher. Zinc, I really like the breakout in zinc, but I notice it's just come off quite aggressively for a retest. I'm not sure what's behind that, but either way, the trend is still up. Nickel, I don't know what's really going on with nickel. It's just sideways. But what's caught my eye, or where I've been bullish, has definitely been gold and silver. And we've been asked a couple of times about whether we'd seen the top, and I said no, I didn't think so. But platinum and palladium, um, these were the ones that most people weren't looking at. And when you have a broad rally in all these things, it shows you that there's kind of um, a very strong bull market, because they're buying everything. See, they're buying everything in the sector. But in base metals, it is a little more fragmented. But broadly speaking, you can see everything's going up. And there's a chart here of the Bloomberg Commodity Index, which includes other things like oil, which isn't going up that much, which is kind of a good thing. But that's broken out of a low, or a base. And if you look at the chart of this, you can see how it's starting to move up. So it's not moved enough to scare the horses, obviously not moved enough to scare CPI. That still seems to be on a looking at data from back here, but the trend is starting to move up. And, again, this is why I look at charts, because you're not going to hear about this until probably the middle of next year, but the market's already moving.
It's so fascinating. The psychology behind market moves. And you have like a lot of these precious metals, gold and silver, going massively up, and yet most people aren't really noticing it, nor talking about it yet. It's such a strange environment right now. I'm pretty excited for this coming year. Now, with that, let's go ahead and jump over to looking at Bitcoin. Let's look at ETH. So some of the bigger ones like Cardano, and then we'll get into some altcoins and see what we can see.
Yeah. So Bitcoin, it's still playing out from this spike low. It's equivocal as to whether it's going to go into another leg down or whether we're going to break up. I'm not sure, because this is the thing. This sort of pattern is normally indicative of what we call a continuation pattern, where the market goes down and then consolidates and then keeps going down. But sentiment just doesn't match with the way the market's traded. And also the macro cycle is more bullish at the moment. So there's more breakouts and positive things that are supporting risk on, that makes me feel like this will just keep consolidating and then start to move up again. So as a trade, putting a trader's hat on, I'd be waiting at this point. But this also looks to me, or in my mind, the sentiment into this area was very much a short-term panic. And I think positions have been sold into this move. And so I'm expecting some form of rebound, but the market has to, give the signal that it wants to do that. And that means it needs to get back over this 94 area. And if it does that, we could be looking at, 108 at the outside. It probably will struggle around here, but we'd have to look at where the macro scene is around that time. So at the moment, it's kind of like, let's see which level it wants to break. And I'm kind of, my question would be, if you'd bought it down here, would you be looking to get out? Maybe lighten up a little bit, but you might also be thinking, well, this is a pullback into a move higher. So We'll have to wait and see. I'm not really sure, but the broader trend is still bullish. We haven't broken below this 74, which I think is absolutely crucial. So if I had to do something here, I'd be a buyer. For me, I would take a long position if I was forced to take a position. But I would put a very close stop because I wouldn't want to let it run below this area here, which could indicate another sharp move down.
Yeah, it's pretty savage how big Bitcoin is pulled back. Now you said something in I think our last episode that because the SEC's stance on crypto, it was so anti-crypto, allowed a lot of U.S. institutions not really get in. And when they miss the boat, they're able to do something that we are not able to do, which is call the boat back. What do you suspect that is what's happening here?
Sorry, I'm going to be totally honest with you. I was just reading the comment. I can't do two things at once. Obviously, I'll never be a newsreader. I was just reading the comment about Japan, and it was a rate hike, not a rate cut. So, sorry, could you repeat the question?
Yeah. So major institutions were somewhat forced to miss out on crypto early adoption because they weren't able to hold it on their books because the SEC was so anti-crypto. But because they're so big, they have the ability to do something that we can't do, which is if you miss a boat, you call the boat back. Do you think that's maybe what's happening here?
It could well be. I think a healthy distrust of what's going on in the background is a good thing. I mean, I'd like to trust but verify, as it were, as to what's going on. In the end, this is a question about, well, what do you do if the market is being manipulated? And a lot of people for a long time said that gold was being manipulated, it was being held down, should be much higher, and it was the banks that were doing it. And we heard this from lots of different sources. I can't really confirm it, but it's certainly gone up a lot recently. Now, I heard from someone else that one of the major banks who are being accused of selling gold just had gold trading clients who needed to sell gold as part of their business because they were producers. Maybe that's all it was. But we'll never know, really. It's kind of an unknown, unless we get to speak to someone in authority who can tell us really what's happening. But again, this is another reason why I look at charts to look for pressure points and trends, because when they start buying again, we should see that in the price. And it would be the sort of thing that would make sense, that the market would be sold off aggressively to kind of force out weaker players to then go long and enjoy another major upward move. But whether they're doing that or not is kind of irrelevant. I mean, when we look at gold, a lot of people said it was being held down. Now they might be saying they can't hold it down anymore. The pressures are too big. Or it could just be that there's a broader worry about inflation, and that's why everyone's buying gold. So which is correct? Does it matter? What matters is, have you bought gold? Where did you buy it? And where are you going to get out? So in the end, the reason for me, and that's why I'm a chartist, is academic. Although I'll discuss the reasons and I'll have a look, and I won't discount them. And it's really interesting to hear what other people think, and the reasons for potential trades. But ultimately, unless the price action confirms it, once gold broke out, it looked like it was going higher, and the fact that it screamed higher suggested that this was part of something that's really important, a much bigger move, and that's kind of proven to be right. Now, whether there's no money, there's no gold in Fort Knox, which was something we discussed, if you remember, we talked about that possibility, or if it's something else, I just don't really know. I can't confirm that. There's no way I could do that. So it wouldn't surprise me if we find out that this is, been a strategy to sell a lot of it to then buy it back later. But I don't know. I couldn't confirm it.
Well, let's jump over to ETH and see what ETH is showing us. As ETH is more like the canary in the coal mine. When ETH really starts doing well is when altcoins start moving.
Yeah, ETH is kind of holding in relatively well. It's just hanging around. It had a very decent rally, and I think last week I was getting excited about it extending, and of course it's just come back into this range again. But then in between, we saw quite a marked short-term sell-off where I think a lot of people had got long into the rate cut and then just took profits on the Friday, and it just extended into Monday. And that's what we're seeing. So, it also wouldn't surprise me if within Europe and countries that celebrate Christmas or whatever is going on, that people are just squaring positions. So they're looking to take lower risk. Now, that doesn't mean the market won't go up. It actually means that there's more likely to be more aggressive moves because lack of liquidity means smaller positions can move the market a lot, especially when people aren't looking at it. But ETH is hanging around. It's making small higher lows. I mean, it's doing one again today. So if you look at these three, they're rallying up. But it's not enough to get truly excited. We do need to break some more significant levels. And if we take a step back, that's still possible from the big picture chart. We could still be in a very convoluted, but a big corrective phase that's part of a wider move to the upside. So again, we shall see. If I had to take a position, I'd still be long here because I can see where the point of me getting out would, if it starts to break this 27.25, that's warning sign, and then below 26.24, then I can't justify technically a position there. You also notice this moving average here. It's hit it once as resistance and it hit it again as resistance. I would feel more comfortable with the market above that moving average, especially with the way it's playing so nicely against it. So a break of that would be, my position here would be neutral. But if it broke above this, that would be the first sign for me to go long. So I'm looking to go long or to hold along. But I prefer some more than one technical sign to indicate that. So at the moment, it's just very light. Market sold off aggressively. It's had a good bounce at a good support level. It's consolidating, and I'm in the short term not really sure, but longer term it should move up with the risk on plays that we're seeing elsewhere. This is the line that it needs to get through for a short-term position to be initiated. But I do like the fact that it's just moving slightly higher from these lows, and it's done it against a very important support area. So the spread I think we were talking about last week and maybe the week before was something that the market had made this left shoulder, this head, potentially this right shoulder, where ETH should outperform in this area here, where it should start to go back up against Bitcoin. Whether that was because if they're both falling, ETH falls the slowest, which is unlikely. It's possible, but it's not likely. It's more likely that ETH is moving up faster than Bitcoin, or Bitcoin's not doing a lot and ETH is rallying. So I still think that chart, the way it's playing out, is interesting, and it gives the opportunity for ETH to outperform. So that's why I kind of like it, but I'm just slightly guarded about where it is now.
Yes, guarded about where it is right now is, well, I guess pretty good way to look at it. I remember, let me pull up my chart here. Of course, I got all kinds of drawings on it here, but I was drawing the bigger W pattern where it comes back down like this. Now, I think it is at an amazing price. What's funny is when it was going down like this, there's this interesting psychology that happens to us as human beings. When things are falling, we get really, really scared, and it feels like it's going to fall for forever. And I remember some major YouTube channels covering it, saying, ETH is dead, and how one of them was selling all of their position from ETH into Solana, and they were selling it at lows, and yet this is a major crypto YouTube channel. And Solana was at highs, and you see people making that decision all the time. That is not the decision the 5% of people that I see make extreme wealth from crypto may. They're evaluating when things are way down, does it have a probable future? Real. And it was amazing how people justify when price is going down like this. And they just decide that, oh yeah, ETH is dead, nobody's going to use it anymore. But behind the scenes, like if you talk to Manu from Definity, he was saying all these banks are lining up to use ETH even at this time. So fundamentally, ETH was strong, and yet the price was way down, and most weren't recognizing that. And then we had this big pump up. Now, correction downward, I don't think this lasts for very much longer. I think this quarter is going to be bad. I'm still like, I'd be surprised if we have a major upplay this December. But I think first quarter, and if not that, second quarter next year is really, really good. And ETH has much, much bigger highs than this ahead of it. But it can feel scary. Strange how Tom Lee didn't have much ETH when ETH crashed to 1400s in 2025, but after the big run up, he became an ETH permabull. It is funny that green candles really catch people's attention to look deeper. Now, Tom Lee, I think he gets it now with ETH, though he came a little bit late. Sometimes really, really big money does come late, no matter what, because they want to make sure it has enough adoption for them to put massive money in. Not only enough adoption, but enough liquidity. So he definitely didn't buy the bottoms of the 1400, and he came in after it was running up. He has been buying like crazy during this. And even still, his instincts, he slows down his buying when the price comes down, and he increases it when the price is going up. That's contrary to how I trade things. We definitely can throw IMX in there. Probably have time for Strike and a few other suggestions. Let's jump over to Cardano and see what we can see there.
Yeah, sure. Would it be possible just to pick up on that last comment about the Japanese rate hike, if possible? Just because I just want to close
this rate hike.
Yeah, or the rate cut, which actually turns out it's not a rate cut at all, and they haven't done it yet. It's supposed to be on Friday, so I was just doing a bit of research on.
Yeah, you want to start going into it, I will find that.
Anyway, there was a comment about there being a rate cut and blood on the streets. There wasn't blood on the streets, so I was confused.
Oh, right here.
Yeah, it's a rate hike, but they haven't hiked rates. Apparently, they're set to do it on Friday, and it's going to be to 0.75% maybe, and maybe raising next year. So that will slow down inflation. Obviously, they're now getting worried about inflation, which is interesting because the Japanese stock market's been going up quite hard. That will pull liquidity out. That's not necessarily a great sign, but it's also a very small amount that they're raising, and it's come from a ton of easing that and it's like a 30-year high at 0.75%. So really not normalized levels by a long way. So not sure. We shall see whether that's affecting it or how it will affect the markets. But let's wait and see what happens. See if yields come off once they do it, which wouldn't surprise me in the short term. But I don't think it's going to change a whole lot. So if we look at, you want to look at Cardano. Where's that gone? Here it is. Yeah, Cardano. Now we had this this little rebound here that, again, I was thinking this is pretty good because it's close to support, and I like the idea of it there. But unfortunately, it's still not hanging in, and we are now back to quite a long-term trend line. So this is really the final point where it needs to rebound from, and I don't like buying markets that are falling. I prefer to wait until they've stabilized and then moved higher. But trend lines are also useful for buy points as the market goes higher, and this is definitely a trend line that's been respected. So at this point right here, for me, it would be a buy with a sensible stop, because obviously if this gets invalidated, this trend line, then we'll be looking at the next level down here at 27 cents. So I'd have a relatively, either time stop below this trend line or price stop to indicate whether I'm wrong, and going in, in a in a low risk way, not in a buying with both hands, because I prefer to wait until the market's showing signs of acceleration from a base. That's what I'm looking for technically, rather than trying to pick the lows, which is a very hard thing to do. But this is a good trend line. It's held in a couple of times really well, and it goes back quite a long way as well. So that's, sometimes it's a bit scary to buy against them, but that's what this is about. Now, we could also put another, what's called, filter on this by saying that it needs to react by rebounding and then stepping in. And I think that's actually a safer way to approach it. If it doesn't respect this trend line, then I don't take the position. So I think that will be a good kind of filter, just in case it lurches through and we get caught buying something that's still on a downward trajectory. So need this to be respected. If it is, then step in with a small position. Back over 50 cents is really where we need it. Let's see what comes next.
Yes, I like buying cheap. I like buying projects I think are fundamentally strong when they're cheap. Now, Cardano is cheap. Now, this is the day, because this is Cardano on Binance's chart. If you remember when they had that huge crash, Binance went wonky and a whole bunch of things got liquidated. So we can factor this candle down here out. But look at how it's right at that point of the trend. And I don't mind buying here. And because I buy and hold, I try to buy when things are cheap and hold till the market flips around, realizing that my strategy includes a heavy dose of patience. I like this buy a lot. Cardano's market cap is much higher than most of what I have. It is one of the few blue chip altcoins that I have. So it's a $12.5 billion market cap. Before, I've seen that I think as high as 65 billion or 70 billion. It's quite on sale right now, and I like on sale. So I definitely, at this price, rate it a buy. And if it goes cheaper, well, great. That's like Christmas. Because what I like, the strategy that really helped me in the bear market of 2018 through 2020 was I just would identify the projects that I really, really liked, and I would buy them when they were cheap. And when they'd get cheaper, as often happened, I would buy more, and I would dollar cost average in more. And that set me up really, really good for the bull market that came after. I don't think this is any different. So this bear market's been longer, and that longer means two things. Number one, it means a lot of people will leave and they'll capitulate, which will drive prices down to these amazing lows that they're at. But I think when the rebound comes, the amount of FOMO that comes in, the amount of people coming in, because the bull market was so delayed, I think the bull market goes a lot higher than it otherwise would have. And for me, you make your money buying low and selling high. So this type of environment's amazing. It's the gift that keeps giving and keeps giving. It feels like it will never stop giving lower prices. Suddenly it will, and it will happen very fast. All right, let's take a look at OMI.
Yeah, so OMI actually is at an interesting level, isn't it? It's kind of rebounded slightly, 7% up today, which is good. But it's sadly for me gone below the support level that I was looking at to hold my position. Um, so it may be, that this is going to continue off without me, but um, I was looking to buy against this support last time we discussed it. We had a good rebound actually last week. Then it just did what markets do, and that's force you out. You can try and keep your risk low and keep your stops tight, and the market just goes, okay, I'm going to take that stop. And there's times when you go, okay, I'm going to leave a stop. I'm not going to put a stop in at all. And the market goes a long way and you end up with a greater risk. So again, this is why it can be quite tricky. But where it is now, if this is a good low, we have a higher low formed. We have something approaching potentially some Elliott wave type build up if it builds on this. But there's still a long way to go before I can be comfortable getting more excited about it. But there are levels in which it will do that. So it needs. This is like, if we look at this level here, this is the kind of ultimate, underwater level for me. So this is where I will really get excited once it starts getting through here. And as we come down, the next level is here, which is where it rallied right up to, as hit as support, hit as resistance. It's really played around there. So that's massive. I want to see that level go as well. The next one is this one, which again was massive support and caused this rally, and then set it to everyone going short and then getting caught out as it's gone back up again. So here we are again playing around this level. So it should push off from here. That would be a really good bull market signal, because again, patience is gone and positions have probably been exited, etc., etc. So I'm going to have to wait, but I've got a feeling that I possibly should be changing that. And I might, that's the thing about looking at the markets midweek. You can look at it and go, actually, I should be, X, either going long or going short. But for me, it's a wait here, but it's playing around important support. And I like the way it also hasn't really reacted that much to, it seems to be non-correlated is what I was going to say. It's non-correlated to other things. So when it was going down, like other things were going up and it wasn't great. And then when things went down, it went down. But there seems to be this disconnect now where it seems to just be doing its own thing, which is a much better sign for it. Because ultimately you want what's called accumulation, and accumulation happens when the price is low, when sentiment is against it, and when it does that, it tends to not follow what the broader market's doing. So we'll have to see whether this is accumulation. Still a bit of a wait for me, but I'm going to be watching it intra-week to see what changes.
Yeah, I can say I'm happy about where it's going, because I don't want OMI to get expensive yet. And a lot of people in the DEVVE OMI community get mad at me for like my thoughts on this, but I look at things through a long-term lens. So I like buying when overall things are cheap, and I like holding them till they go absolutely crazy. There's this intermediate zone, which I can't say I love. And it's kind of like when the bottom is already in and then the price goes like 6x up. Well, that's not good enough to buy more in, because it's not near as cheap as it was. And yet it's not the highs that I'm going to take profits in yet. So that intermediate zone is like a terrible place to be. And so coming back down to this really cheap price, now not quite as cheap as here. And I have a friend that went to 1 billion OMI in this environment. He massively added to his OMI bags, taking up to over 1 billion OMI. It's come back down to a really nice price, and it is a really nice price down here. Will it continue? I Don't know. I mean, this was a surprise when it came down so cheap here. Maybe it gets cheaper, or maybe it's done. I don't have a clue of which of the two is going to play out, and I don't need to know. That's why my strategy of buying cheap, and sometimes it goes cheaper and I buy more, works so well, because I'm not trying to time the exact bottom, which is almost impossible to time the exact bottom. All right, so I'd give it a buy. And let's jump into some suggestions. All right, we looked at this. Does it look like the price of DEVVE has bottomed out yesterday? I don't think we have your mic.
Oh no, sorry. I thought you were going to discuss it first. Yeah, no. I'd say not at this stage. Not from a technical point of view. It's been on the kind of wait pile for a while, hasn't it? And yeah, I can't step in and buy something like this. This is called catching a falling knife. The volatility is normally indicative of when markets are when there's like a panic, and panics can normally indicate a low. But for the moment, the way I would look at it from technicals is that when you get that panic, the market then consolidates, then you get a base, then you can step in. But from my point of view, I'd be waiting, just because the trend is still down, and I want to see a bit more evidence that the market is based. This could be one piece in a puzzle of a bigger reversal, but at this stage, it's too early to say. So I'll be waiting.
Yeah, so they just extended, just barely went. They have a big announcement that they've been teasing for a long time. They just announced yesterday that that announcement probably won't come till Q1 of next year. So price is dumped with that, and it's like, okay, it's not quite at the lows of here, but it is at a really juicy price. And I like buying low. So now fundamentally, as far as I know, DEVVE's still really strong. I remember my talk with Tom like 8 months ago, maybe 6 to 8 months ago, and he said that they had like two key positions that they might need to let go, but if they did let those go, they could continue to operate indefinitely, which is a really strong place to be because the bull market hasn't come, their token price hasn't gotten up. So you worry about, will a business, because all these are businesses, will they run out of money, which therefore means they run out of runway before they crash and burn into the forest. So as long as they survive into the bull market, then you end up getting pretty good returns. Now, if they end up really doing well, then you get amazing returns. And I often share that it looks like this in regular early stage business investing, that you invest in 10 projects and 7 out of the 10 will completely fail. 2 will do okay, and usually 1 will do extremely well. And over a 10 to 12 year period, usually about 7x your money, maybe 10x your money if you're lucky. And that's in the traditional early stage business investing. Now, crypto, I like better than that because the timelines are shortened. You don't have to wait 12 years or 10 years for an exit usually. Number 2, like just better, if you're choosing well, you can have better returns and lower failures, but you'll still have some failures. So is DEVVE going to be a failure? I don't think so. I think they're alive and well and hoping that the bull run comes, because essentially most of the crypto businesses need it. There are very few in the position like Definity is, and say Binance and some other ones where they have incoming profitability even in this market, and that makes them ultimately long-term sustainable. most early stage businesses, tech businesses, aren't in that stage. If they don't get massive traction before they run out of runway, they end up failing. So I think DevVe is still strong despite that delay in announcement. They did couple that delay in announcement with, they said there's some big additional news that they want to release with that. And so they're teasing out some additional big news. Although I think a lot of people were hoping that it would go up, and they lost, that the announcement would come out this quarter. And the fact that it isn't, they just became impatient and they sold the price down to here. And that happens. All right, let's take a look. What else was on there? GFAL and Star Atlas. How are we doing on time? Minute. Okay, we'll look at both those really quickly.
Sure. So yeah, games for a living. If this is the chart, let me just check the place.
Yeah,
yeah, that's right. Yeah, so look, the trend is still down. This isn't enough for a base, so we could be looking at another move lower. So for me, it's a wait. I need to see more in the base, potential base. When I'm looking back, I haven't got enough data here to see whether there's anything that would suggest that this is where it's based out before, so it could be repeating. These rallies have been kind of weak, which is not a great sign. So I'd be guarded, maybe use these two moving averages as a signal as to when to buy in. But for the moment, with it being below both of them and the way the trend looks, I'd be holding off. But the only other thing I would say is that things change very quickly, as they have done before. So the point of looking at these things is to look for change. And the trend has been down. There's no real change there at the moment, apart from this short-term consolidation. So that's not enough. That blip is not enough to change the trend, in my view. So I'll still be waiting at this point and looking for small positive signs of a impulsive trend to the upside.
Yes, this is a. I wanted to share this chart, even though this isn't GFAL's, and let me share. Like, this is GFAL's chart overall, right? So when it launched, it did get some initial traction, and a lot of this was there was a big run on blockchain gaming, and it did really good. Went up tremendously October, November 2023, and since has pulled back and gotten really cheap. But in a bear market, it's not unusual for projects to absolutely get devastated during the bear market, especially when they launch in the early part of the bear market. I wanted to use a OMI as a symbol of that. I want to take the date back to their first bear market before the bull market and show you what it looked like. Essentially, when their token launched, it didn't do, it just limped and struggled along. In fact, if I take out that section, you can see, okay, wow, just a declining price with a few spikes during that bear market. And it was scary to invest in. Now, Ecomi did 3,000x from there. So just because it has done nothing but go down like GFAL doesn't mean it can't go the other way. Now, I haven't kept up to date with GFAL to see what is really going on with them, other than they did some Diamond Dreams type game, and those types of like just distracted games that you can play on your phone aren't my type of game. So I don't really have an opinion on that type of game as far as how good it is versus the competition. Will it take off? What I did like about Games for a Living is the team behind it has a hugely strong background in building games. But it's at kind of a scary point. They raised a bunch of money when they did here. Do they have enough money and funds to survive operations until things get better? I have no bearing on that. I don't know. So it's a risky buy, and I hold some games for a living, but it's a risky buy at $6.5 million market cap. But if they survive and in the meantime launch some good products or good games off in the bull market, to probably do quite well. If I were thinking of adding more to games for a living, I would be watching all the videos I could from the team, giving me an indicator of where exactly things are at right now. So I like this one, and I really like it at this price. I would rate it a buy at this price, but before I actually bought, would want to watch the body language of the founding team and see how confident they feel. They're not the words they use, but their body language on, like, see if I can get a feel for how much runway they might have left, because that's different. That's a big part of the factor. All right, let's jump over to Star Atlas.
Oh, Star Atlas was it? I thought it was something else. Okay. Do you have the code? So I just put in Star
Atlas USDT. It just was showing it. Yeah.
All right. I don't know about that. That doesn't look right to me. Is that right? No.
When you go to a specific exchange, it starts with when it started trading on that exchange, which may or may not reflect all the history. But it is Atlas. Not Star. So yeah. Star Atlas is the full name. ATLAS. The name of the token.
Let's see. Okay. Yeah, there we go.
That price looks correct.
Yeah. So again, this is see the line, we drew that in last time, and it's not broken above it. These are, you know, trigger points, tripwires, whatever you want to call them, for me to tell me when things are changing from one dynamic to another. And whilst that's in place, it's saying that the risk is that it's going to go lower. Apart from, you know, this big spike down, which I think was a real spike, people came into the market to buy, and that pushed it back up again, which is a good sign. But now we're seeing it coming off again, which is not so good. Now, I've seen this happen before, where the market's made a low, it's come down again, it's got a bit hairy as it does that, and then it's turned around again, and this forms part of a broader base. But it's certainly not something I can justify stepping into until it's completed this base, until it's made more of a consolidation. Thing worries me slightly is the way the bar's opening up a little bit, in meaning that the volume's increasing, or the pace is increasing to the downside, because we've got two trend lines. We got one here, and we got another one that's slightly accelerated here. So at the very least, I'd be waiting for the short-term line to break before considering going long. So it's definitely a wait from me, but we should look at it again in the new year.
Yeah, that's a good idea. It's gotten really, really inexpensive. Now, one of the things I've seen from blockchain gaming projects that have a better chance to survive is they've figured out a way to continue to monetize. And I'll use Cornucopias as a good example. One of the hard things is funding game development is really expensive, especially for a top tier game. A lot of people don't realize that some of the top tier games had 50 to 100 to sometimes hundreds of millions of dollars spent on their development. And here a blockchain game, you know, might raise 40 million initially. And if their token price does well and they reserve a lot of tokens for their treasury, they can continue to fund for a while off of that. But really good game development is expensive. So ongoing monetization helps. But in order to ongoingly monetize, that'd be offering something of value. So Cornucopias is a good example in that they've created enough of a following and enough of a community following it that they've been able to sell backpacks. and some guns for their game and some things that if you buy in the early days, specific items you won't be able to get later. So there may, if the game is ultimately successful, be some really good value in those. And if it's not, well, they won't be worth much, but it does help it continue to have funds to continue development till they can get it to a place where they get massive traction. Star Atlas has done some of that too, which is smart. So where they are in development, I don't know. I think they had a bunch of their funds in FTX when FTX went down, but a lot of people have been made whole on the dollar value of what they had in there. So they've probably gotten some funds back from that, but blockchain gaming has been out of the narrative, and so their price has gotten extremely cheap. I've watched some videos a couple weeks ago on where their gameplay was at, and it looked like it was at a pretty good place. And it looks like the game is probably coming together as something people would want to play. What does the runway look like? That I don't know. That is something that you best get by watching videos of the founders and watching their body language. If they don't specifically address it, you're looking for their confidence in through their body language. But it is one that has a lot of name recognition. So when blockchain gaming goes well, if they're still alive, I think they do quite well. I'm going to rate them as a buy. All right, let's see. Next up, what was the next one? Is it Immutable X?
Yeah, we can look at that.
Okay.
Yeah, similar kind of pattern we're seeing here, isn't it? That we had the spike down, rally, but since then the trend has been negative. It's kind of matching this prior low. Again, technically, I can't justify buying it here. The only thing that could suggest that there's support is this prior support, but it's lurched into it, and it take a bit of bravery to step in at this point, which, you know, I'm willing to admit I probably wouldn't do. I hear when you say, you know, when projects are cheap, you like to step in and buy, and I'm sure that's a strategy that works for you, but it's not something that I could do. And but what I find fascinating about that is that also being contrary is so important in this market. And ultimately, at some point, if you pick the right point, it will be, you know, a very good low buy. But I have to stick to the way I look at markets and where I feel comfortable. And it has to just be strong technically or form a base. And that often means, well, actually almost always means missing an ultimate low. So therefore, if it is a low here, then that's great. I'd be really pleased. But from my point of view, I can't buy it here because the trend is still down.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a wait.
Oh my gosh, is Immutable X at a cheap price, and it is surprising that it's gotten this cheap in the bear market. I remember when it started this run up from 48 cents to like $3.40. It's like, oh my gosh, no, it's too expensive. And there were lots of people buying here. I'm telling you, so many people do the buy high and then sell low thing, and you're seeing it. You're seeing it in the price here. Because some of the people selling here, look, there's not a single point where it's hit this cheap before. So they did buy high and they are selling low. And look at this rapid descent below 40 cents down to 22 cents. Now, this is a good buy. It is crazy how high their market cap is, even with the price being so cheap. But you've seen most of their tokens come into circulation. And let's look at token unlocks. So, yeah, the last of the tokens looks like were unlocked just barely. So most all of their tokens are in circulation. That's a good thing. And it's probably part of what's been pushing this price further down, but there's not further token unlocks that I can see. This is an amazing buy price at 22 cents. So I would give it a buy. Good call. All right, I wanted to address, well, let's look at HBAR and see what we can see on HBAR.
Similar situation. In fact, the chart looks exactly the same in terms of the short term. It's had the spike, it's come all the way back to that point, except this is just slightly lower that we can see. If we just move in, it's breaking that low. There is some support around this area. There's a bit more lower down. So we're looking at 0.09 as opposed to where it is now. So perhaps that's what it's going to do, is take all the stops out around here, hit this support, and then go up. But again, I need to wait for that confirmation, see it hit the support, and then start to go up, break this downward trend line, or even get over this resistance point here, which is where we can see these two lows, low points. That is now a barrier. And that would be where I think breaking the trend line, getting through this resistance in this zone would make it look attractive. So for the moment, it's just the wrong side of that. But I'd be interested to see where it starts its bouncing, which is driven by people thinking it's cheap and stepping in. And that's, I guess, all that technical's doing, seeing what the market's doing, and then, looking for the confirmation that may turn this into a much stronger upward trend. But for the minute, I can't, using the tools I look at, I can't justify a buy. So it's going to be a wait. But again, this is one, because of this zone, I'd like to have a look at it again next year. On the plus side, volume is going down, which is a better sign as it's falling. If volume was going up, that would be a more worrying sign. But of course, it's not great when things are falling anyway. But the fact that volume's going down, if it starts to tick up and volume goes up, that would be a very interesting divergence. So that's something to look out for. But for the moment, there's too much downward pressure to step in at this point.
Yeah. So what I like about HBAR is it's one of our community members, Sale, talks about is the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, or the 4 horsemen basically of the bull run. And these are the like major ones behind the new financial rails that the mainstream press doesn't talk about, but there are tons of press articles and news conferences, and actually conferences where these players are talking about how Japan is massively adopting these new financial rails, the US and many other countries. And so there's, let me see if I can remember them all. HBAR is part of that. XRP is the main underpinner of it. Stellar Lumens, and I'm forgetting which other ones. But Hedera is in there. And so when Trump won, we saw this big run up here, and it went all the way up to 27 cents and then even higher at 35 cents. And now it's pulled back nicely and juicily. Now, it is outside the range of what I'm buying. For the most part, I'm not buying anything with a market cap this high except for XRP. Now, I do like Hedera as one of the new members of essentially going to be behind a lot of the financial rails of the financial ecosystem, even though most haven't realized it yet. So I like it as a play with much more upside than usually such high market cap projects have. Like it's about 70% down from its recent highs, which is a great buy price. And at 10 cents, it's got significant potential upside from here for such a high market cap coin. It's in a good place. I'm going to rate it as a buy. All right, I want to talk about something here. I don't mind addressing this question, but I'm going to share some insights in that Wes isn't probably seeing. Do you even feel bad for promoting a rug pull rain bumper. So there's so much flaw in the statement as you're making it there. First of all, bumper wasn't a rug pull. Step one to becoming a good investor is learning the difference between a rug pull and a business failure. And if you can't wrap your mind around the difference between those two, you're going to have a hard time picking solid fundamental projects, because solid fundamental projects won't ever rug pull you, though they might fail. And there's a complete difference. So a rug pull is when a company launches. They provide some liquidity in there, and most of them decide they're a scam before they even launch. And they're just trying to get some hype, some momentum, traction, and the price takes off, and then they pull all the liquidity out. And so they sell all their tokens, pull all the liquidity out, and it falls apart. And that is what a rug pull is. And that's not even close to what bumper is. So if you can't call it by its right terms, Wes, like if you haven't learned the difference yet, and I've explained this to you multiple times, if you don't start categorizing things right, I'm not even going to address your questions. Why? Because bumper is a business failure. And a business failure is when they continue working, but they run out of their financial runway, and they crash like a plane that runs out of runway in the forest, and it runs into all the trees, crashes and burns, and essentially there are no financial survivors in that. And that's exactly what bumper is. Now, do I feel bad? Well, I've told everyone along the way that there will be business failures, and I don't know which ones. And I would love to be able to pick so good that 100% of the ones that I like didn't fail. Nobody in the world can do that. So do I expect myself to be able to do that? No. Like, I had lots of money invested in bumper, which all got crashed and burned in the forest. That's part of the game. In fact, I've told everyone that 67% of the stuff that I invested in from 2018 to 2020 failed. I mean, 2/3 failed like bumper did. So you're expecting something that doesn't even exist, that you can always be right. Now, Paul and I wish we could 100% be right. We could take every variable and we were always right on all of our picks. Nobody is. But what I like about this type of investing is, even in a situation where 2/3 of mine crashed, burn, went to zero, I still made amazing, incredible gains, which is the space that we're in. So do I love that I lost money on bumper? No, but that's just part of the game. That's why we find safety through diversity, because it's hard to tell during the bear market what is ultimately going to survive and what's not. So when we diversify, that's what gives us our safety and protection. So would I have loved to see it? Shoot, I put another 50K into bumper like a year ago, and love to have that 50K in something else. But when you're placing your bets on the table and you don't know how things are going to play out, so your expectations are just way off there, Wes. All right. Chris says XDC is the fourth of the four horsemen, as Sale talks about. In our private Discord, there's a lot of research and discussions on Hedera, XDC, Ripple, and other things going on. So if you haven't joined us there, it's a great place to really get deep dives that we don't often cover on this channel. All right. I like it. Uno Sean says OMI to $100 billion market cap, LFG. Good. Dano says 100% as of this week. Well, that's time. Jump in, Jolenberg, next week and suggest Ondo. Actually, probably when is our next time? Because the next 2 weeks is going to be vacation time for us. So it probably won't be till the 7th in 3 weeks before we have another show. So join us then and we'll take a look at Ondo. Paul, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for making it work this week, even though you couldn't make it work Wednesday. Thank you for jumping in with us. My audience absolutely loves your insights, and I do too.
Well, thank you, and I appreciate the accommodation to change the time. Just to wish everyone a happy holiday, Merry Christmas if that's your thing, or whatever your holidays might be. And yeah, it's been a hell of a year, and look forward to seeing you next year. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Now, being in the crypto space can be frustrating. And like I shared way back when, it's not for everyone. It requires a lot of patience. It requires a lot of learning and growth yourself, because when you really start making crazy good money in this, when you become a savage investor yourself, because really all you're doing is early stage business investment. So a lot of people come in the crypto space and at first they think, oh, magic internet money, and they think all coins are created equal. And that's not even close to being true. Yes, some meme coins pump tremendously. The odds on meme coins are quite atrocious and bad, and in my opinion, not worth much focus, if any at all. What I like is actual businesses that are doing something that will take this new form of technology, and they will make things in the world more efficient, cost less, somehow more useful, that they're adding some real value to end users, whether those end users are regular people or businesses. They have good value there. And those are the kind of businesses that I like to invest in. Now, if they can survive the bear market, then they end up doing pretty good to extremely good in the bull run, usually. Now, this bear market has been long, like 5 years, and probably we've seen additional casualties we wouldn't have seen had it not been 5 years. And that's kind of a bummer, but there's a good side to that as well. I say kind of a bummer. Of course, it feels like a bummer, especially when you're here right now and all you can see is the losses, because the winners haven't yet won. All you can see is the ones that you've lost on have gone to zero, and it's frustrating. And this washes most people out. But what I hope is you're not most people. Remember, only 5% end up doing well in this. I hope by now you can see why the numbers are so low, that it's only 5%. And it takes a certain level of tenacity that some people just don't have. Because as much as we can make our guesses on when the bull market is going to go and how low the bear market is going to go, they're guesses. And the market gets most of the people to guess the wrong way most of the time. So where I find my safety is generally buying low when it's in the bear market, knowing that markets do swing around and that crypto comes into the world focus, then it goes out of the world focus. When it goes out of the world focus, prices get really, really low, and it's a great time to dollar cost average in. When it comes into the focus that everyone's talking about, that is a great time to sell. Now, historically, the pattern had been really short, being about 4 years long. This time it's different. It's not 4 years. It's probably 5 years, but we don't even know that for sure. I would say the odds are extremely likely for that, especially with quantitative easing. The amount of money going to be coming in, causing that money supply growth, which has corresponded to the altcoin rallies of the past. I think it's setting up for a great maybe Q2 of this year, but we'll see how it plays out. What we can see is historically, altcoin prices are really, really low. Some of them near bear market lows. So the question is, when does that bull market hit? Is it this coming year? It's the year after? Odds are it's this coming year, but we don't know that for certain. So if you're buying with money you can't afford to lose and not going into debt, you can patiently wait for it to play out. Thanks so much for joining us. You guys have a Merry Christmas. Have a great New Year. Look forward to it. I think 2026 is going to bring us some amazing results. And I've been listening because he's so good at the bigger macro view, Raoul Pal, and he talks about people washing out because they just decide they can't have nice things. And we can have nice things, but most won't get them because they won't have the patience, and they will wash out and sell low instead of waiting so that they can sell high. We'll see you all soon. Oh, this wrap is for all of you. Why don't we wind down with that?
chasing all of the gains, chasing the pumps and all of the hype trains. But like in life, you buy before you could. Was told to buy when it was pouring like a rainmaker should. I buy when it's down, don't chase the boats that I miss. Cause I always make the time in mind. I take the one out cause I'm patient like that, and I'll wait for the right time. I sell when it's high, I buy when it's low. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm just a rainmaker running the show. Calculated investments, I don't leave with my heart. Principles are simple, they're leaving a mark. Buy when it's boring, just gotta be smart. I sell when it's hype, like all the channels they pump it. That's when I was selling a parabolic to dump it. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Time is never better, but time like the present. This next 5 years is a gift and it's feeling like heaven. I'm committed to learn, studying to know that nothing comes easy, but with knowledge the game show. Sticking out this wrong cause soon will come a bear market. Learning and growing, and when it's slow will be the target. They say it's come out, Bitcoin is dead. The massive decreases can get to your head. Sticking around, the time is better. Strong like that, I'll let the others be fretters. 2 years time, the ball will bring back the gains. That makes it worth the effort cause here comes the rain. So let's go rainmakers, let's make it all happen. Let go of the hate, let the haters be cracking. I'm here for 5 years, let's do this together. The time is right, the time could be better. They call me rich, they call me smart. I'm a rainmaker, making my own start. I'm with the future, learning the past. Makes the time fly by, years going so fast. The game plan is mine, I'll own it now. When I reach the top, haters asking me how. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I'll follow what I learn, not relying on luck. Haters be hating, the time to slow down. Addressing what they say when I'm wearing my crown. They're chasing green candles like someone who was new. I got a vision that was bigger, helping me to push through. I'm still human and sometimes it is rough, and that's what makes me special, simply I stay tough. Cause I'm a rainmaker, investments I love. And I follow what I learn, not relying on luck.